It's Fill Your Plate Now, where every bite brings you closer to the farm gate and further from what's unhealthy. Now here's your hosts, Julie and Tammy, helping you live well by filling your plate well.
So, Tammy, today's episode is all about pork.
I know, I can't wait.
And we have brought in the expert. So I'm going to introduce her, and we'll go right from there. We've
Sounds
got some
good.
We've got some
good
good
questions
yes,
for her
we've
today.
Got good questions for
Can't
her.
wait.
So, Kristen, thanks for joining us. Kristen Hicks Roof, PhD. It's in nutrition, right?
Yeah.
And you're also a registered dietitian. And there's a bunch of other letters behind your name, but most of our audience won't know this. But the point is, you have a lot of expertise when it comes to this topic. You've had more than a decade of experience spanning academia, clinical practices, corporate nutrition, and industry leadership. And you currently serve as the Director of Human Nutrition at the National Pork Board. Okay, now you got to tell your team at the Pork Board that we're going to be talking all about pork. And this is where you lead the organization's strategic nutrition initiatives on behalf of more than 60,000 American pork producers. Or another way to put that is pig farmers. Your work focuses on advancing the role of pork in balanced dietary patterns, guiding and overseeing nutrition research. That's the other thing that I think is fascinating. It's not just about, your expertise in nutrition, but you're actually applying it specifically to this high-quality protein, which happens to be pork. And also building collaborations to bridge the gap between the nutrition science and consumer behavior. So welcome, and we feel very blessed to have you as part of our episode today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I am excited, and really my main approach is how do we take this really complex nutrition science and make it translatable for the everyday person? And that's my favorite part of my job.
Awesome, and that's what I was going to say. You spend a lot of time doing that. So give us an overview, though, so our listeners kind of understand what is the National Pork Board?
Yeah, so the National Pork Board is a commodity board, and we are funded on behalf of pig farmers that contribute to a fund that is called the Pork Checkoff. And as part of the Pork Checkoff, we are mandated to do research, education, and promotion. And that's really where our team in the Human Nutrition sits. We fit as part of the broader organization, but we help to conduct research in human nutrition, do promotion and education to educate health professionals, scientists, nutrition, and everyday consumers about the role of pork.
And one little caveat I want to emphasize, you kind of explained that, but it's really the pork farmers themselves, the pork producers that are funding this. So it's boots on the ground level funding for a research and promotion arm.
That's correct. And pig farmers are involved in every step of the process. So I have a human nutrition advisory group that helps make decisions on research. And we have multiple pig farmers that give their contributions. Why do they think this is a smart investment of their dollars? And then once we get the research, how are we going to best communicate it? And so that is going back to the producer, but then also to the wider audience. And that's really what we do as on behalf of the whole National Pork Board.
And the first time Kristen and I met was over pork tacos.
They were delicious.
I was going to say.
Oh, where are the tacos today? Come on now,
I know.
guys.
I should have brought them. Yeah, but they were delicious, and we had a great conversation. And I thought, oh my gosh, you need to be on the podcast. But
Yeah.
Well, I love the nutrition science side of things. I love the geeky science stuff and getting down into the weeds on things. But I know the second part of that is the application to the consumer, so that they actually eat those healthy, nutritious foods. What are you finding motivates the food choices?
So we know that consumers in general are motivated by taste and flavor. I mean, there is report over report that taste and flavor are the number one driver. And then after that, you see price. And then the third is health and nutrition. Where does this fit in my diet? And that differentiates across different consumers. Not every consumer is the exact same, or not every person. We have different individual motivators. But in general, those are the three ways. And that's really where pork comes into play too. We lean in on the taste and flavor because we know that's what people love about pork is the taste and flavor. And I have some fun research we'll talk about at taste and flavor. But then we also talk about how does it fit into balanced dietary patterns, and how does it fit in. We talk a lot on our nutrition team about pork and plants, and I know we'll dive deeper into that. So Yeah, how do you hit where people really enjoy food? Because if you don't enjoy food, what's the point of eating?
Right.
Well,
Right?
and although it may not be the leanest cut of pork, I don't know anybody who doesn't enjoy bacon. You know,
Of course, but bacon can be a segue to getting people to eat more plants too, right?
yeah.
One of my favorite examples that I love to give to food service or health professionals is 10 years ago, you never saw Brussels sprouts on menus, ever.
I know.
But then they started realizing, wow, how do I get this more flavorful? Then they added bacon. And then all of a sudden you started seeing these on food service menus. It's bacon and Brussels sprouts. And that's the way. So that's what we talk a lot about on our nutrition team is pork is the flavor driver to getting people to eat more fruits and vegetables.
good point. Yeah.
Speaking of that flavor driver, so you said taste is number one.
Yep.
Then it's price, and what was it?
And then nutrition.
And nutrition.
Yeah.
So that's the consumer's focus on it.
Right.
But talk about that flavor profile aspect. No meat does it like pork, and why?
Yeah. I mean, I think since before I came to the pork board, I think pork is such a unique animal in the sense of every cut has such a unique flavor profile. And so when I first came on, I said, why do we not have any research on what pork flavor is all about? So we actually invested in a research study on behalf of Pig Farmer Dollars to look at what are all the flavor nuances in pork. And we found out that pork has over 110 flavor nuances. So you have this mushroom, you have hazelnut, you have all these different flavors coming together. And I think, and then it's also broken down by cut and cooking method in this study. But that's what we really go talk about. We talk about that flavor. And that flavor is not only in the protein, but also in the fat.
And one of the things I want to remember that you said to me over that delicious pork taco was that pork is on the top in terms of rank, in terms of the number of flavors that you can get out of pork, correct?
Yeah, that's what this researcher has said. And she even coined it, which I thought was really fascinating, is the world of flavors. Because it really ties in. Pork is such a cultural staple around the world. If you look at Asian culture, Hispanic culture, South American culture, pork is ingrained in everything that they eat, right? It's one of the most common proteins in the world. And I think a lot of that has to do with flavor and then pairing, right? And how do we pair pork with other things?
Cool.
Oh, that's fascinating. I know. I was going to ask you a question about some examples of the research, but I think you just gave that to us.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, all the different areas you can explore. And then if we turn that a little and look at the nutrients in it, I know most animal proteins are high quality proteins, as is pork. But could you explain to our listeners a little bit about what a high quality protein is and what other nutrients in pork are very important for consumers to have?
I think it's such a good question, and we get this question all the time because they hear high quality protein, right? People hear it and they're like, what does that mean? Well, actually, it's a regulated definition, and it's regulated by several different digestibility metrics. But basically what that means is that you can absorb and utilize all the essential amino acids. Think about them as like the building blocks of protein. So in our body, we use protein for your immunity. You use protein for growth and development, for immune function, for everything you can think of. You use protein, and you use those amino acids. Mm-hmm. Well, high quality protein deliver all the essential amino acids at the best bioavailability in the body. And so all your animal source foods, including pork, are considered high quality protein, which is superior compared to the plant proteins. I'm not saying people can't eat plant proteins and that they're bad. Mm-hmm. What I'm saying is if you're looking at the quality, that animal proteins like pork are just higher quality, meaning you need less of it to get all the amino acids for your body to grow and develop.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so pork 101 overview, and in some ways we've kind of already answered it, but since we're talking about a high quality meat protein, would you classify it as a red meat, a white meat?
It's really interesting because pork is in the middle ground. So according
Okay.
to USDA definitions, it is a red meat because actually the amount of myoglobin. So if you look at the color, has a little bit more of a pinkish to reddish color depending on the type of cut. That's how the USDA defines it.
Okay.
And pork almost fits in the middle. So we have some nutrients in there, like you mentioned. We have iron, right, which you typically see in beef. We also have iron in pork, but then we also have a lot of other nutrients similar to chicken as well. So, pork is a great source of a lot of B vitamins. If you think, vitamin B1, B2, vitamin B12, which is a really important one for energy metabolism. It has zinc in it. It has choline, which is also in eggs. So pork is a bountiful amount of nutrients in there. And whether it's a red or a white meat, there's a lot of controversy on this. But let's say it is a red meat, because by definition it is. If you look and you start to split up the data a little bit more, pork doesn't really behave like a lot of other red meats when we think about the health, the economics, the environment, which I know is a really important thing to this young audience. Pork is more similar in environmental footprint to beans and legumes and poultry compared to its red meat counterpart of beef and lamb. So I think there's some nuance in here that every protein and every food has their own way of delivering nutrients. So we need to take all of those into effect. It's not that you have to eat one over the other, and we're not going to demonize one or the other. How do we build them in complement with each other? That's really my philosophy, and a lot of what we talk about at the Pork Board. It's pork and plants. It's building these nutritious meals together with flavor at the number one driver.
That's funny, because that kind of goes back to that whole variety and moderation that we've been preaching for centuries, it seems like, in the nutrition world. And, speaking of nutrition, since we're on the topic, because it's a high quality protein, are you seeing an increased demand for it now? Because with all those weight loss drugs out there, I know consumers taking those have to, really try to make sure all their calories count, because they're eating less.
They are eating less, and they're craving less as well. So protein is going to be a key driver, and it's going to continue to be a key driver with those who are taking the weight loss medications. And so I think, and there's two different ways that people can take in protein. You can either go with a natural whole food like pork, right, which tastes delicious, and it's also, you have over 20 grams of protein per 3-ounce serving. So you get a lot of bang for your buck in terms of protein. Or you can go to some of the packaged products, which are great for some other people, but I always try and do a whole food approach, and I think that's where pork really fits in. It's a perfect opportunity for anyone on those weight loss medications to get the high quality protein, to get the micronutrients at an overall low caloric intake. So just to put it in perspective, so a 3-ounce serving of pork has about 22 grams of protein for about 120 to 125 calories. A half a cup of black beans has about 118 calories, but only 8 grams of protein. So again, people say, oh, I want to eat more plant-based proteins. Well, you're going to need 2 to 3 times as much of the plant-based proteins as you would animal proteins. So I think there's nuance.
Yeah. And would it be as well absorbed?
No, it wouldn't.
Yeah.
Which is a whole nother overlay.
Yeah, it's a whole nother topic, yes.
Wow. And hence the reason we can call pork the high quality protein and beef the high quality protein, because those amino acids, vitamins, and all the other things. So it just scales. But then people always have the fat content question for you. Are there lean cuts of pork? And then I'm just curious, what's one of your favorite cuts?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, because people often do think pork may not have lean options. So we actually have 8 lean cuts, 3 that are certified by the American Heart Association. Oh. So your sirloin pork chop, your pork roast, and your pork tenderloin, which is the leanest. Fun fact, the pork tenderloin is just as lean as skinless chicken breast.
Wow.
So when I think about people on diets and being health conscious, I'm always like, well, there's also a really good flavorful option, pork tenderloin, if you're looking for a protein swap in your, daily meals. But yeah, I think there's a cut for everyone in terms of pork. And you're seeing a little bit of a tide turning in the terms of like how fat is part of the body. So I think we'll continue to see advancements in research on the role of fat in human health. But definitely, pork has lean cuts, pork has non-lean cuts. So it's whatever you choose. Right. But we also have the flavor to go along with either of it, if you want.
Yeah, that's one of the things we've discovered. We've discussed that the whole, fat content issue. It's even taken a renaissance. If it's a natural baseline product like your protein meats, it's healthy fat. So we need to quit being afraid of it.
It's tricky though. It's just like in eggs, right?
Yeah.
It took eggs 40 years to get out of the cholesterol is bad for you. Remember we used to throw away egg yolks?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, for
And
years.
there's that choline again.
Right.
Yeah. Throwing it out. Yeah.
So I think with fat, I think we've generalized for so long. And I think we just need a lot more research.
Right.
And that's one of the things that we do with the National Pork Board. We do research on behalf of the industry. We're not doing it on a specific product line. We're doing it on behalf of the industry to show here's the role of these foods in human health. And I think there is a play of intact, wholesome animal fats.
Yeah.
I do think there is a play. Now, I just don't think we have enough data on it in
But
randomized controlled
there's
trials.
a play. I like the way you say that, but you didn't answer the one question. What's your favorite cut?
Oh my God. How can you choose one? Well, today I had some of my leftover Hawaiian pulled pork.
Ooh.
Oh, it was so good. And then last night, I actually cooked a Korean meatball with a 50-50 blend of pork and beef, which I think they complement each other really well. And I added some green onions and some fresh ginger and then paired it with some green beans and jasmine rice. It was phenomenal.
Oh, you're making me hungry.
Oh, it's
And
so
I mean,
good.
we just had some pulled pork not too long ago too. So, but to get the best flavor out of pork, is there an ideal temperature or an ideal way to cook pork?
It's a great question. So I always bring this back to the 1980s campaign, The Other White Meat, which I'm sure you guys are very familiar with. Well, a lot of people then still think about pork as a white meat, and so they cook it so there's no pink on the inside, right? They might cook it to 160 or 170 or whatever they might cook it to. Pork, since it is a red meat, we should cook it to 145. It should have a nice rosy pink center. And that's really where you get the flavor, right? You get the flavor when it's cooked. Think about same with beef, right? You may not cook it all the way till well done. You want it at that 145 with a 3-minute rest. And that's where you get the juicy and the tender and all the flavor.
That's awesome.
And that is for whole muscle cuts. It would be a 160 if you use ground pork.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great to hear. Yeah.
Can you break down the nutrition profile? You sort of did already a little bit, but again, for our listeners to really get this in their heart and their minds, what is that nutrition profile of lean pork, and how does it compare to the other proteins?
So we actually have a really cool resource on our Pork and Partners community of pork compared to other proteins. It's tricky of comparing to other proteins. I think they all fit in together and they all have their own micronutrient profile. However, what I know about pork is a high quality protein. So you get over 20 grams of protein per 3-ounce serving. You get loaded in B vitamins. So we have 10 essential nutrients in a 3-ounce serving of pork. So again, that B vitamin, B6, B12, B1, B2. And then I think something that's not talked about as much, and I think, again, we need more research, is it's full of zinc and iron and selenium and choline. Some of these kind of lesser known, lesser talked about nutrients. So yeah, I think we'll continue to see the science evolve. And I think because pork is a bang for your buck in terms of being a nutritional powerhouse, you get that all in one. You don't need multivitamins. You don't need supplements. You're getting it all in a whole food.
And that's one of the things that I try to tell people that ask me about protein meats is, guess what? You don't really have to take supplements. If you eliminate meat from your diet, I'm told even by my vegan friends that they have to take supplements because they're not getting that whole broad range of the nutrients that we need,
Right.
the macro and the micro.
Exactly. When I think I think any dietary approach can work. It all depends on the person, but we know that animal source food provide key nutrients, whether that is dairy or that's beef or that's pork or eggs. There are key nutrients in there. And so if you're omitting any animal source foods, I would work with a dietitian, work with a health professional, and really learn some of your profiles, because you don't want to go 10 years down the road with these micronutrient deficiencies that you don't know are happening. And I've seen it as a corporate dietitian. I've seen plant-based people 10, 20 years later have pernicious anemia, a vitamin B12 deficiency. I've seen it firsthand. And you wouldn't know until it gets to that point. And so, again, I think all dietary patterns fit, but if you are omitting animal source foods, I would work with a health professional.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. I know pediatricians too, find failure to thrive in kids because they aren't getting that right combination of nutrients. And I know sometimes they'll substitute cow's milk for a vegetable-based milk,
Right.
and there's failure to thrive because they're not getting protein, they're not getting calcium. So
Wow.
I think
Kinda
that's across
scary.
the board. You've got to go for those high-quality cuts of meat and pork and nutrients and just really work to make sure that diet is balanced. And I mean, you were talking about too the popularity of pork. What is the most popular cut of pork?
Oh, I mean, pork, people love bacon and sausage, but people also love ribs and carnitas. And, so I think there's a cut for everyone. That's my favorite way to play it. It's what you choose. But I think if you do love bacon and sausage, you will find those flavors in the whole muscle cut as well. So how do you take that and get further into the category? Because we know pork is economically friendly, especially with some of the prices of its counterparts right now, which are so expensive. So I do think it's something that people can add to their consideration set. You get the flavor, you get the nutrition.
And I have to tell you what my favorite, but I have to tie it in with who used to be one of my favorite cooks. A grandma's pork roast was delightful. So I love a good pork roast.
I do too.
Just had to throw that in there.
Well, I think one of the things that's really cool about what's happening in today's society is we're harnessing this global flavors movement. And that is where pork shines. I mean, pork is one of the most consumed proteins in the world. You go to Asia, you go to South America, pork is going to be central into that diet. And you're starting to see that here. Obviously, chicken is still predominantly chosen. I think there's a health halo around that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with those other proteins. I'm just saying that there's a lot of opportunity, especially when we think about global flavors. I think pork has a big play here.
Yeah, and the new campaign is
Yes.
Taste What Pork Can Do. So, but on that point, bacon and ribs dominate the conversation about pork. I mean, we have to admit that.
Yeah.
But how can healthcare providers or nutritionists like yourself educate patients about healthier ways to include pork in their diet? Really, any cut is healthy in proportion to what you should be eating. So
Exactly.
how do you talk to the healthcare professional about pork? What do you say to them?
So we have a Pork and Partners community, which is incredible. We have almost, I think, 3,000 healthcare professionals in our community right now. And really, it's all about practical ways to talk to their patients about pork. So we have a number of free handouts, we have free continuing education, and really we talk about pork and plants because pork is the flavor driver to getting people to eat more plants, right? And no patient is going to listen to you if you come in and tell them that they can't have their favorite foods, which might be bacon or sausage or ribs. So rather than a kind of negative approach, we always talk about how do we add, okay? So if they're out there grilling, delicious, let's be honest, we're in Arizona, we love grilling most of the year. If we're out there grilling ribs or we're grilling a loin or we're grilling pork chops, how do we add? Can we add some corn on the grill? Can you add some sliced peaches on the grill, radishes, carrots? How do you add to that to bring in the plants, but then you still get the pork that you know and love?
So there's something you keep saying, the pork and plant play. Is it because of the breadth and depth of the pork flavors in the pork meat that influences that? In other words, it sounds like to me you're saying that really if you add pork to your plate, then you're going to have more opportunities to really enjoy some things that you're not thinking about in the vegetable kingdom as well. Is that what you're saying?
100%. So
Okay.
we actually a study was published earlier this year, and what it did is it compared a vegetarian-based dietary pattern in older adults versus a vegetarian plus pork dietary pattern. And they looked and they saw the differences. How much do they like it? How much will they continue on the diet? how much less kind of like waste would you have because
Okay.
you actually enjoy the diet? And we saw significant differences. And that's not the only study. They're more people like the meals more. They're more likely to eat it. And one of the things with nutrition is only nutrition if people eat it. So if they
Absolutely,
don't
yes.
eat
Never thought of that.
vegetables
Yeah.
on their own, you have to find a way to get them to eat vegetables or fruit. And pork can be that flavored to get them to eat those
Okay.
things that you don't normally eat. So it's not
Wow.
only evidence-based, it's practical. And it's something that people would resonate to because if you're a health professional and you're talking with a patient and they say they love bacon, that's awesome. How do we add to bacon? That doesn't mean eliminate bacon. That says, how do we add to it? And now all of a sudden your patient feels heard, they feel comforted, and now they know how to improve without having to take away.
So I have my own personal story to add to that then. Cabbage is not my favorite vegetable, but if you do pork tacos and they use cabbage,
Delicious.
I totally am into it. And the crunch of the cabbage with the pork, which is extremely flavorful. So that's one of those areas where it may not be a favorite vegetable of mine, but because I'm using,
Right.
you totally inspired me today.
That's true. And that's the same thing with me and Brussels sprouts. When I started putting bacon with Brussels sprouts, changed the whole
Yeah. Right.
taste profile.
Yeah.
But I want to flip it around a little. So let's say someone does not eat very much pork.
Yeah.
Do you have some suggestions on ways they can start incorporating that into what they're eating already?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. One of the ways that I talk about the most is ground pork, right? If people are going and they're choosing ground chicken, ground turkey, ground beef, whatever they might be choosing, well, ground pork is a great option to transition into, right? And we know it's economically friendly. So if we're thinking, let's say they're making spaghetti or hamburgers or meatloaf or whatever they might be cooking for the day, can they do a 50-50 blend, right? It's the same thing of what we do as dietitians when we get people to eat whole grains. People have a hard time going from refined spaghetti to whole grain spaghetti because there's very different texture differences. But if you start to do a 50-50 blend, people get more comfortable with it. There's added nutritional value, and that's the same thing with ground pork. So I think it's a really good entryway. And then I would also say the pork tenderloin, especially if people are more mindful choice makers, like they're really more health thinking. The
Okay.
pork tenderloin is just as lean as skinless chicken breast. So it's a great way to kind of add some versatility, and you'll start to be like, wow, this is really flavorful. Maybe I'm going to add this to my consideration set further. So I think there's a lot of different entry points, whether you want to come in the process route or the fresh route. I think there's a cut for everyone.
And you have a website, right, that has recipes that consumers can go to?
Yes, so we actually have the new campaign,
Yeah.
Taste What Pork Can Do, which is so phenomenal because really it says everything that I'm talking about and embodies that. So tastewhatporkcando.com is the consumer website. There's tons of recipes on there. And then if there are any health professionals listening, we do also have our Pork and Partners community where we do have additional recipes that are really more nutrition forward and tons of free resources and education, everything free of charge.
That's great.
So my question kind of still is following on that line about cooking more pork in your mix and your menu, especially because it is that high quality protein. If someone was saying, yeah, but I've never cooked it other than, maybe having it in tacos and stuff, kind of, let's say they're hesitant. Give them words of encouragement. How do they embrace the world of pork protein because it's such a healthy pork or meat?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say, again, number one is ground because people are very familiar with ground meats. They know how to cook it. They feel comfortable cooking it. And I think ground beef is the most consumed meat besides chicken, if I'm correct, or it's got to be at least up there. I don't know the exact data. So I think ground is a really good entry point because
Okay.
people feel comfortable eating ground, whatever type
It's
of protein.
easy to fix.
It's
Yeah.
easy to fix, and you can put it in anything. You can put it on top of salad. You can mix it in a casserole. I mean, you can use it with anything. And then I would also say if you're using the whole muscle cuts, really cooking to that 145 with a 3-minute rest.
Okay.
You don't need to be concerned about food safety here in the U.S. We have the most safe commercial pork supply. There was a study done, I think it came out last year, that basically it was a couple million pigs of pork samples, and there was not a single case of trichinosis, which is like an old thing that people think about. I'm scared to eat pink meat, pink pork. And so really the data is just not there. Our pig farming practices have improved so much for a safe commercial pork supply. So if you cook it to that 145 with a 3-minute rest, hopefully you have a meat thermometer. So that's the goal there. Enjoy that pink pork, and it is delicious. You're going to feel the flavor in your mouth, and that will bring you back.
Yeah.
I don't need to sell anything else. Once
No,
you taste
right.
it, that's what it is.
I'm trying not to drool right now
Yeah.
because you're making me hungry.
The reality of it is it's a versatile protein meat. It's easy to do based on what you're saying. You guys have a world of recipes on the tastewhatporkcando.org website, or is it .com? It might be .com. But anyway, just
try
plug
both,
in.
and
Yeah,
one will work,
Yeah,
right.
one will work.
Yeah.
Just go and literally Google "Taste What Pork Can Do," because
And it'll
that's-
pop up, yeah.
that's the new campaign.
It's got to be .org.
And we'll put it on our
Okay.
descriptor so
Yeah.
so the
Well,
audience can see it when they
Right, we'll
dial
include
in.
it. But that's what's so inspiring to me is the versatility of it. You're convincing me, and our family actually does cook a lot of pork, so it's not like. But for someone that has not really introduced this in their diet as a protein meat, when we need that, knowing that it's very high quality protein, I mean, we should not be afraid of this.
Of course. Well, and another cut that I haven't talked as much about is there are, you have the pork loin, which is your pork chops. Although that's not my go-to, that usually the tenderloin is my go-to. Pork chops are also really kind of easy. They're easy to see, a little bit easier than the pork tenderloin because it's all, it's a big chunk, or it's a chunk of meat versus slice like your pork chops.
Right.
So that's another option. And then you can also put, now they sell a boneless half pork loin. And I love putting that in my crock pot in the morning.
Okay.
And that way I basically have a leaner version of shredded pork. So you can also use a pork shoulder or a butt,
Yeah, pork butt.
But those have a little higher fat. I'm more nutritionally conscious, so that's not my particular choosing, but I love the half pork loin in the crock pot.
And you have little kids, so you're keeping in mind what they love.
Yes.
And it sounds like you cook a lot of pork.
We do cook a lot of pork, and really not by, I just think it has the flavor. And I think we cook all proteins in our house. We will have vegetarian meals. We'll also have animal protein meals. But it's really about how do I show my kids and plants. And I think pork does such a great job. Like yesterday when we had our meatballs, the meatballs were the first to go. But then I added the plants, right? I added the green beans. I added some sliced sweet potatoes. And so it's how do you build this meal together to really maximize nutrition, but then also expose your kids. I mean, my kids will eat all types of cuisines: Korean, Indian, American, Italian, you name it. And I think that exposure is really important for this young crowd.
Well, and you guys, when you're talking about kids, it makes me think about when my kids were younger, and the crock pot is golden because sometimes there's just not a lot of extra time to fix a meal, and pulled pork in the crock pot needs very little seasoning,
Right.
and is so delicious and tender, and kids love it, and it saves that time at the end of the day when you don't have time to cook a big meal.
Yeah. And then we're also seeing from some of the sensory research, the air fryer pork tenderloin had the most juicy and flavorful cut out of every cooking method and cut. So there's something about this air fryer, which I think this young generation does a great job on the air fryer. I mean, I'm guilty of it as a busy mom, of how do we have it convenient and easy, whether that's cubed loin or you're doing a chop or you're doing the tenderloin. I think the air fryer is also a great go-to.
I'm going to have to try that. Right now, I'm kind of a remedial air fryer, but I'm learning slowly but surely. I'll have to try that.
Yeah,
That's a great
yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, any other questions, Tammy? Or you're covered?
I think I would just ask if you wanted to have 3 takeaways for our listeners with pork. What would it be?
I think number one, pork is taste, flavor, and nutrition. And, that really goes a long way, is to give people more options when they think about what are their protein options out there. So that's number one. Number two, I love working at the National Pork Board on behalf of the 60,000 pig farmers. It is so fun and rewarding to be able to go out and talk about this protein that they work tirelessly 365 days a year to produce a high quality protein for the American people and abroad. So I think that's my second. And then third, if you challenge yourself, try a new recipe. Go to the grocery store and try getting a ground pork, try getting a muscle cut, get bacon or sausage, whatever your flavor desires, and then cook it in a new way. And really, I think if you try it, your palate might be expanded, and then maybe I think you'll appreciate it more.
Well, I just got an air fryer about, I don't know, a month or two ago, and I haven't tried pork in it yet, so I promise you that's what I'm going to try. But I want you to, any final comments as it relates to the new campaign to help our listeners really introduce this into their diet, especially if all they know is bacon and sausage. Taste what pork can do. What should we consider in this campaign?
The campaign is so smart in the sense of, it really is. Taste what pork can do. See what I can do for you. You love pizza? That's because there's pepperoni, and that's pork. You love charcuterie boards? That's salami. That's prosciutto. That's all pork, right? And so taste what that can do and then get further into the category, right? So if you love those cuts, how do you expand your portfolio? How do you go and try a tenderloin? Go try a loin. Go try carnitas or a tonkatsu, right? Like, there's so many different things, and you really can taste what pork can do.
Yeah.
And it'll make you happy because you're tasting something delicious, and we love good food.
Well, thank you, Kristen, for hanging out with us for this brief episode, and I think we need to have her back, don't you think?
I agree, and I think
Yes.
when we're done, I'm going right to that website and get some new recipes for pork.
Yes, and the reality of it, in the recipes that I've tried, I've never had any difficulty in cooking them. So one of the compliments to you and your team is that you guys are really doing the research on this, and you're really providing recipes for us that work.
Yeah.
And I think we need to recognize that. So thank you again for coming in.
Yeah.
Let's
Thanks so
hang out,
much.
and we'll have more pork as we go along.
Thanks so much for having me.